Hello and welcome to another free history revision video. Today we're looking at the Elizabethan topic and we're going to look at the problem of poverty. So welcome to this lesson. Today, as I said, we're going to look at poverty and we're going to revise the knowledge, the key facts, the key laws and the key changes that Elizabeth brought in to try and solve this big problem that Tudors faced, this problem of poverty. We're going to look at also the right to an account question as well. One of the tricky questions, the ones we don't really like, but we're going to make it nice and simple. So by the end of the day, you can go with your top level skills and feel confident about this topic. Firstly, we're going to have a little quiz of your knowledge and a chance for me to go through some of the facts of the topic as well. If your knowledge is not so good on this, then do have a look at my poverty video. I'll put a link at the top and refresh your knowledge and then come back to us and have a go at the quiz and find out about the right account answer. So now, over to the quiz. Here we are then, our quiz. 10 questions to test your facts and your knowledge and understanding. Do you have the top level skills required and top knowledge required to make good answers? To test yourself now, you can pause me and give this little test a go. Right, hopefully you've had some time and you've given it a go, you've had to think about them or you've jotted down some answers, so let's go through them. So what was a pauper? Well, a pauper was someone that was so poor they needed charity or to beg. And obviously we categorize different types of paupers as well. So question 2, list reasons why unemployment had increased, and there's lots of reasons why. So we go right back to Henry VII. He banned private retinues or private large amounts of staff for lords because they could make private armies. Obviously he was fearful of civil war, so he banned those. Enclosure of the land and sheep farming led to few labourers being needed, so lots of farm labourers were now becoming unemployed because of the wool trade, which is more profitable than growing food. Selling wool was easier and more profitable. Henry VIII had closed the monasteries, so the monks and all the staff in the monasteries were now unemployed, and also that meant that there was no poor care. Monasteries were where people went for alms, for charity, for help, but that had all been removed. We can also talk about a population rise, and that's in question 3 as well. So how much did the population rise in Elizabethan times? It rose from 2.8 to 4 million. So obviously a million more at least. And that means that there's more food needed, more jobs needed, more help needed. And a lot of these people can't get jobs and they become poor people, paupers, beggars in towns. So what was the Jewish structure of society called? With the nobles, then rich, well, the gentry, the poor, and then these sort of animals beneath. The great chain of being. We need to keep referencing this. This is more of like a social question. And it's the sort of responsibility of the people at the top of the great chain to look after people at the bottom. So we need to be aware of that. Thomas Harmon's book from 1567 is really quite important. He categorized 3 types of undeserving poor. And what are they? Well, we've got the counterfeit crank, the bare-top trickster, and the clapper dudgeon. So we've got the idea of the counterfeit faking to be poor to earn money, the bare-top trickster with the criminal gangs tempting the person with maybe the naked lady tempting the people, and then obviously they get beaten up. We've got then we're looking at things like faked illnesses and fake madness like Tom of Bedlam as well to consider. So what did the 1531 poor laws lead to? Well, it led to beggar licenses, but if you're an illegal beggar, you might get whipped and beaten. Then you might, so second warning, you might get a burnt ear, and a third time, there's no warning, you could be executed. And the whole point was that you needed to head home as well to your hometown, where you could be given a beggar license, and the towns were swamped with beggars, and they wanted to try and remove them from the towns. So what was the 1576 law towards the poor called? Well, it's the act for setting people to work. So trying to set up work schemes using the poor law rate, the money raised by the taxes on the gentry and the rich to try and set people to work. Which place helped to set an example of how to care for the poor with a survey of the idle and the unfortunate and with care was given to the unfortunate and work was given to the idle. So this is sort of sets up the 1601 poor law really, and Norwich is the place that does this. Do make sure you've got your facts on Norwich, Ipswich and York. You're aware of the different things they did. So when did Elizabeth bring in a poor law for all to follow in 1601? And what did Elizabeth's poor law do? Well, the rich were taxed to pay for the deserving poor to be sort of given jobs and support and training, and the idle poor were obviously going to be forced into work as well. And some places started to do the idea of workhouses, although that was obviously not the national law until 1834. Now, if you need to know a little bit more, I mentioned, do you know about York and Ipswich? Then do reference my quiz notes. I'll put a link to it in the notes on underneath this video on YouTube. Okay. I hope the quiz went well and your knowledge is very, very sound and you've got a successful understanding of the topic. Now, let's move on to that write an account question. Here we are then with our write an account question, and obviously it's not our favourite skill, is it? If anything like my class, you'll be a bit worried when you see this type of question, but we're going to make it nice and easy today and think about how we get our grade 9 answer. So work with me through this lesson. This can be interactive and you can sort of stop and work through tasks as I instruct, or you can just sort of listen as we explain an answer. So your first task then is to write down this question and think about a success criteria. So how would you answer this question correctly? What successful skills should you show? So think about the wording of the question and jot down some ideas. So my first thoughts about this is, and writing an account question actually needs to be the word explain. Writing accounts like a story skill, write an account of this, whereas we need to explain. Historians make an argument. So explain how the problem of poverty affected Elizabethan England is more the appropriate question. So if we're explaining, we need our peel paragraph skills. And if you're new to these videos, I'll explain that as we go through. Secondly, we need to give an example of poverty and explain how this caused problems for Elizabethan England. So we're going to have set out an argument, making a point. We're then going to give an example to support that of poverty. And then we're going to explain the consequences for Elizabethan England. That's what it's asking us to do. Explain how the problem of poverty affects Elizabethan England. So we need a problem of poverty example, but then we need the consequences for Elizabethan England explained. So that's why it sort of says write a narrative, because you've got event and consequences, and you'd have that in a sort of story idea. But we're going to do it in more of an argument in a peel paragraph. When you're thinking about consequences for Elizabethan England and explaining, that means we need to think about different people and places. Remember, I talked about the great chain of being. So what were the gentry and nobility thinking? What was the poor thinking as well? And then different places I've mentioned, think about York, think about Norwich, think about Ipswich, and obviously there's London as well. So think about different places. Okay, so this will make it easier to do that. Think about it as Elizabethan England society. So explain 2 problems for 6 marks and add wider links using other people, places or times to explain for extra sort of ideas to get 8 marks. So it will look a bit like this. So one way that poverty caused problems for Elizabethan England was that, we introduce a problem, we give some evidence of that, idea, the problem, and then we're going to think about how this caused problems for Elizabethan England. So this caused problems for Elizabethan England because we're going to explain about different social groups, different places that supports that. It's not about Elizabeth, it's Elizabethan England. So furthermore, this led to, we could talk about other places perhaps. So if you like, you can pause there and just give it a go, right? Have a think, go to an idea. You might want to talk about the sense of crime people felt. You might, lots of beggars in the streets. You might want to think about how the nobility, maybe, or gentry are getting upset, paying extra taxes. Those are different things to think about. Give it a go. But otherwise, I'm going to go through and answer with you, which you can do a little bit at a time if you like. So here we are. Here's my starting point. I'm going to argue this. Okay, and if you like, you can argue along with me. Think about what the next bit will be. So one way that poverty caused problems for Elizabethan England was that there was too much poverty and unemployment for the Great Chain of Being to solve. Great Chain of Being's job was to help the poor, the nobility and gentry giving them money, and it was struggling to do that. So can you think of an example? So, for example, due to large population rises, London rose to 200,000 people, and poverty caused by enclosure and increasing inflation. So I've used an example to explain why there was lots of poverty, the population increase and the changing in jobs. This affected Elizabethan England because, so now I'm going to explain about social change, different groups, different places. So can you think of how we do that? What is the explanation we might not want to look for? Have a think. My idea is this. This affected Elizabethan England because the gentry nobility were unhappy at the increasing costs of supporting the poor. In places like London, they set up Bedlam hospitals for the poor, which taxes had to pay for. So I've got a concrete example, Bedlam hospitals, that obviously can cost a lot of money to set up a Bedlam hospital, to put the poor people in, these sort of idle poor or the sort of sick poor, and they had to pay for it with their taxes, so they're getting unhappy. Okay, so now I really want to solidify this answer with a furthermore. We think about different people or place as an example. What do you think? My idea is, furthermore, other places like Norwich, perhaps inspired by Harman's book about the tricksters and Tom and Bedlam poor, started to worry about idle poor and started to use the poor rate to set up the poor to work in the 1570s. So the poor had to go to work and were forced into a work situation because they were idle and wouldn't do anything. So I've got two places there now, and I've got reference to laws in two places and the problem that the rich are unhappy that there's so much poverty. So have a go yourself now. I've got to think about law changes from punishment to forced work. You can think about, again, the rich, and are they happy or not? You can think about the Puritans, are they happy? Puritans believe in hard work and hard graft. Are they happy? And might think there's a problem in society at this time. So give it a go. And I've got an example answer for you to look at in a sec to help reference your ideas from. Okay. So here's a few more bits of help. Might set out your idea for you. You could talk about another way that poverty caused problems for Elizabethan England was that gentry and nobility wanted to put the poor to work, or Puritans started to set up almshouses. That Puritan idea I just mentioned. So have a go at your own. As I said, finally, here's an example answer you could assess your own work with. So have a look at this. So another way that poverty caused problems for Elizabethan England was nobility and gentry, due to their role in the Great Chain of Being, thought that poverty care was unacceptable. For example, at the start of Elizabeth's reign, the poor were still subject to the 1531 law that sent the poor to their hometowns, would execute any poor that refused to go home. Explaining. This caused problems for Elizabethan England because the gentry and nobility thought this was unfair, started to organise support to get the poor to work. In 1576, the Act set the poor to work. Then in 1601, the poor law was set up. This led to workhouses to make the poor contribute and work harder rather than execution. This changed Elizabethan England as the poor contributed, but the wealthy had to pay more money in taxes. So furthermore, the Puritans felt that religious care was not acceptable, and they started to build almshouses to care for the poor rather than punish them as part of the Great Chain. For example, Lord Burghley built an almshouse to care for 12 people in poverty in the area near his Burghley estate. So that gives you an idea of problems that face the rich and the Puritans felt was unacceptable. Also, you can see that both these paragraphs are slightly changeable quite quickly, and you can change it to any question really about poverty, whether it's changing society or causes of poverty. It just needs a little bit of a tinkering, and you've got an answer for lots of questions. So I hope you found today's lesson really useful. You've managed to revise your poverty knowledge of some of the key laws and key places, and you've managed to see and work through a top grade answer and see how to do that sort of writing account skill in an explaining style. So look out for more videos coming soon to help you through this, and Bye bye for now.